From the News Channel 5 Network, this is OpenLine.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to OpenLine. Glad you are with us tonight. It's really one of my favorite topics. I'm not wearing a tie. We're really just going to kind of be a little laid back tonight and talk about movies. What were your favorite movies this summer? I have a couple. What are you looking forward to this fall? And the fall is when kind of movies get serious and we start seeing some of the movies that might be coming out that would be up for awards. And so that's always interesting to me. And I love our guest. It's Jason Shawhan. He is a film critic with the Nashville Scene. He's joining us via Zoom. Jason, are you there?
Hello.
Hello, Jason. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime.
So, all right, we're going to talk about, as I just said, movies from the summer, movies coming out this fall. Overall, what would you say? How were things as far as attendance at movies this summer? You know, what are we seeing as far in the movie industry? How was this summer?
I mean, it's the thing about it that's fascinating is that whatever narrative you want to fit to it, you can. There are a lot of films that just sort of, you know, they came out, they did okay, whatever. But then you also had just enough doing, you know, billions of dollars worth of business like Top Gun Maverick that, like, you know, all the studios just are like, okay. We're still doing what we've always been doing. It's just a different set of circumstances. It, like, you know, it used to be you could have like 2 or 3 movies that make $1 billion a year. And like now with the pandemic still being an ongoing thing, it's, you know, maybe you'll get just one a year, but the people who made that one are very happy with it. And it seemed like I'd say the overwhelming narrative of the summer of 2022 at the movies was that things got scaled back, just in that there wasn't as much coming out. They sort of like cleared the pathway, I guess is the best way of putting it. There would be like one big ticket blockbuster coming out and maybe like an art film or like something that was keyed in towards like seniors or an older demographic, and you'd get that, and that's what people would go see, and then, you know, rinse and repeat with the next few weeks. It's in a way, it's the American exhibition system growing a lot like that of the Indian films in the U.S., where it's literally there's a limited pipeline, there's a few here. Something's going to be a massive hit, and that'll hang around for a little while longer, and everything else, see it while you can, or it's gone.
And we'll get to some specific movies in a moment, but I want to still talk big picture. I'm somebody who has always loved going to the theater. The act of going to the theater, getting a nice drink, and just sitting there and being there in the theater. In the pandemic, that went away. And I had a new routine. And I did come to enjoy, in certain circumstances, watching the movie at home and pausing it when I needed to, you know, go do something or whatever, get some food or whatever, and then coming back to it. And so I haven't been going to the theater as much. I do both. You know, now I'm kind of doing both. But how much have people fully returned to the theater? Do you think there is a change in people's behavior when it comes to watching movies? What about that?
I think, and granted, this is just my own observations. I'm not saying that this is how things are, period. But I think people who want to go to the movies are still going to the movies. I think the big difference is in people who like maybe were occasional moviegoers, like maybe like once or twice a year. Like, I still think there's not been that much that's brought them back in, except for maybe like the last Spider-Man film and Top Gun Maverick this summer. I mean, that thing was a juggernaut. It just destroyed everything that's passed. And there were people who hadn't been to the movies for the whole pandemic who came out to see that. So I think it depends on the film. But I also think that like people who like go to the movies often, like it's in your blood, if it's your religion, you know, you're still going to go to the movies. It's just a question of like figuring out what percentage of the population that actually is. But right. I think people who enjoy film are still going out and experiencing it, and you know the drive-ins are still a totally. God bless the drive-ins. If nothing else, like if someday when we're actually through this pandemic and it's all over, like when the list is written of like the 3 good things that came out because of it, like one, definitely being able to like pick up orders from stores and grocery stores. That's a good thing. Drive-ins. That to me is like one of the great rebirths, honestly, of the past few years, because I mean, like, you know, they're still around. They were there if you knew about it, but like because of the pandemic, all of a sudden people who hadn't thought about the drive-in in like 20 years all of a sudden were like, oh, well, here's an option. And you know, I'm grateful for that.
So that's a result. That's interesting. So drive-ins have had a resurgence as a result of the pandemic.
Absolutely.
Now that's very interesting. And then the whole notion of the streaming, you know, kind of what I was talking about. So we heard just recently HBO Max saying they're not going to release some movies that they were going to release. I think Batgirl was one of them on HBO Max. Do you think the studios are going to be moving away from putting stuff out on streaming, and they're saying we're just going to do theaters, come back to the theater, everyone want it all?
I don't know if they're going to go exclusively to theaters, and that the HBO Max situation is very, like, it's messy, and it's messy in a way that I don't know if we have enough time to get into here. But what that is, you know, the HBO and Warner Brothers assets got bought by Discovery. So you've got the higher ups at Discovery saying, okay, we want to do this, we don't want to do this. And so, and granted, it's all pivoted on the thing that, you know, streaming, the way that streaming has been for the past couple of years is unsustainable. Like, studios need films in theaters to like bring in that money. Like, yeah, it's great to have people watching your streaming service, but it's like, it's not bringing in the money the way that, like, hand over fist, the way that like a film that's really like tapped in to the culture as a whole does. So I'm not pro what's happening with HBO Max, because I mean, like you had films that were basically done, that they just decided that it's better for them to just never release them at all and do it as a tax write-off. And I just, that's disrespectful to artists, and you're really going to have to do work to make me say that that's acceptable in any way. I mean, it's just sort of like, and the problem with it is that it diminishes their reputation. Like Warner Brothers as a studio, that was, you know, Stanley Kubrick and Clint Eastwood. I mean, both of them for decades, that was where they made their movies. And, you know, I mean, Stanley's dead, you know, may he rest in peace. But Clint, I mean, he's still in his 90s making films. And the guy who is now running his studio, like, openly disrespected him in print, which you should never, ever do to Clint Eastwood. Like, I mean, that's just a rule that makes sense, and it has been since the 80s. You just don't know. It's like, you can disagree with Clint, but don't go putting it in print. I mean,
that's very funny. All right, no, don't do that. Okay, let's talk about movies. Let's talk about summer movies. Give us top 3. Maybe yours might be different than however you want to define top 3. What made news? What was most interesting? What stood out this summer?
The most amazing thing that happened this summer, and like, I mean, I did not really care for Top Gun Maverick that much, but I mean, it was a phenomenon, and it redefined the American movie box office situation during the pandemic. And you know, people had an amazing time with that. You know, I know people who hadn't been to a theater the whole time who went and saw that and had a great time, and, you know, good for them. My short version of my problems with it, it needed Meg Ryan. Like, she was sorely missed. Like, if we watched the first Top Gun, Meg Ryan is like this live wire of energy that she doesn't really get to be anymore, and I would have loved to have had her come back. The other thing is, the most interesting thing about that film, and the realest 3 minutes in it, is just that sequence where Tom Cruise has to sit there with Val Kilmer in the situation that he is in currently, and just steep in, this is what time does to people. Because so much of Tom Cruise's career is like, I'm still running, I'm still doing my own stunts, I'm still the same kind of action star that I've been for, you know, almost 40 years. And more power to it. I mean, like, that the money that film brought in, there is an audience for that, and people genuinely loved it. But seeing him in this, like, you know, the sort of like a little bit Peter Pan-ish persona that he's cultivated, like Peter Pan who does his own stunts, but he's having to sit there with someone who's battling cancer, who is like a testament to the ravages of time, who's the same age as him. Like, honestly, and this is my like weirdo art film person saying, if the entire film had just been 2 hours of that, it would have been the best film of the year. I think it's
it would have been more depressing, Jason. It would have been a more depressing film.
But I don't think that that's necessarily depressing. I think it's real. I think it's like it's honest. Mm-hmm. And you know, if you want to be able to have like an air war that doesn't result in like international global conflict, like, okay, that's fine. I'll accept that. But you can at least like lean into the personal realism. But for me, the biggest story of the summer was in March. An Indian film came out called RRR. And it was big. It was the biggest Indian language film in the U.S. for a while, and it did its traditional, like, it did a month, which was insane because that's way longer than most of them play here. And then during the summer, some programmers in New York set up what was called the Encore, and they like brought this film back, and it had played on like the Indian film circuit, which is sort of like a parallel exhibition thing. And they showed it in art houses. It showed at the Belcourt here in Nashville, but like in like theaters that don't traditionally show Indian cinema. And it was a phenomenon. And then it went on Netflix and set all sorts of records there. Like, people who've never seen Indian films before are watching RRR. And to me, it's an exceptional film. It's like the action is great. It's big. It has a sense of scope to it that even the wildest Marvel films don't quite get there. I mean, it's like, what do you do when you find yourself at a racist dinner party? Throw a panther at it. It's like it's an exceptional film, and I love the fact that it's been so well received that it keeps expanding. It's like it started out.
So Jason, when you come on, I take notes, okay? And so I'm going to write down RRR.
It's on Netflix.
And so it's on Netflix. So that's one you recommend, and that's what you would say a really kind of remarkable thing from the summer.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it is a summer film. It is a big action-packed blockbuster. It's got lots of effects. It's got an amazing musical number. It's great. It's like literally every kind of movie all at the same time. It's just a little bit over 3 hours long, but I mean, it doesn't feel like that. It's breezy and spry. And,
okay, RRR, that's great. And it's on Netflix. I will tell you, we're going to have to go to break, but I want to just say, I did go see Top Gun. I went and saw it with my son, who's 13 years old or so. We had watched over the pandemic the first Top Gun, and then we went and saw this other one. We saw it in a packed theater, and it was just a beautiful experience. I mean, it was great to share that with my son. I thought they did do a great job of nostalgia and a great job of whatever else you need to do, action and all of that. You're right about Val Kilmer. I had seen the documentary about his current situation, and that
documentary is incredible,
heartbreaking and powerful. Yeah. And I'd seen that, and so then you wonder, okay, how? And it's interesting how they're taking care of that. They're texting, throughout the movie. That's how he's communicating, and that scene is amazing. What you're talking about, I think, really was the most impactful scene, and just really hammered home to me how that movie was kind of bridging the gap between the old and the new, and I'm sharing it with my son, and this big packed theater, which I hadn't been in a long time because of COVID, and so I had a great experience, and it is one of my favorite movies of the year. I thought it was just incredible. But
I'm right there with you, because that experience in a packed theater, like, people always say, well, what's your religious background? I mean, I was raised Methodist, but I consider myself a moviegoer. That's my religion. So like going to the movies is like church for me. So like that, there is that kind of experience when it's something that's transformative and transcendent. And I'm all for that. Like, I don't have to like the movie to appreciate the joy and the energy that people get out of it. So like, I'm very happy that film was the success that it was, because, you know, it showed people that, like, you know, everybody wants to like write the eulogy for the movie going experience, and like, nope. And, you know, bless Tom Cruise for just being like, I'm not going to let that happen.
And
you know,
I was
using his star power.
I was happy that they didn't release that in the it was supposed to come out before the pandemic, I think, and they didn't release it during the pandemic. It wasn't one of those that was streaming, and it did kind of, he held it, you know, and it signaled I felt it signaled the return of movies to theaters, and I don't know if that's what will materialize, but that is what it felt like, and that was another reason I think it was so powerful. He did hold it.
There have been several throughout the I don't want to say the pandemic experience, the pandemic era, that have done it. Like the last Spider-Man thing, that was the first one where like there were like sellout shows all over the country. And there are just certain films that tap into the experience to where people are just like, all right, let's go to the movies. It's just, I think people on the whole are more, what's the word I'm looking for? Picky in a good way about what they go to see. You know, the whole idea of, well, let's just go see something, you know, when you add in COVID-19 as just sort of a mitigating factor in that, I don't think you see that sort of casual, well, let's just go see something. I think going to the movies has become much more of a deliberate choice and action.
All right, I love the discussion. All right, Triple R, I'm writing that down. We're going to take a break. Then I'm going to come back. I'm going to ask you for maybe 2 other movies from the summer that we should all be aware of. And then we're going to move on to the fall. And the fall is kind of a big time as we get ready for all the awards and everything. So we'll take a break. Be back right after this.